Very good. Thank you very much, Darren. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Debbie Douglas, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Governance Committee. I'm replacing our friend, Brian Smith, who usually chairs this committee. He's had a family emergency, so won't be able to join us today. As you know, since the pandemic, we've been holding these meetings virtually. Our meeting was originally scheduled on November 8th, but due to an unfortunate circumstance of one of our members, we had to postpone the meeting for lack of quorum. Let's begin by acknowledging that we're holding our meeting on this land, the traditional territory of many nations, most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit. The land is a traditional territory also of the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Toronto, where we're located, is home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. And we acknowledge that it is Treaty 13 territory with the Mississaugas of the Credit, but it's also an agreement, the Belt with One Spoon Wampum, which is an agreement amongst the nations to care and take care of the land around the Great Lakes. So welcome to our public session. During the public session, there are several reports for information, including the standing report of the City Council directions, board attention, the strategic communications plan, the biannual human resources update, and there is also one report that will be coming to the committee for approval. I believe that we received 2 written deputations that committee members would have received, and we will assume that they have been read. Approval of the agenda. I will now review the public consent agenda items and public regular agenda items as listed in the agenda. For our consent agenda, we have the approval of the public meeting, confirmation of the minutes, City Council directions that requires our board's attention. And then, of course, on our regular agenda items, as I said, we have the business arising from our public minutes, our status update in terms of our communication plan, our biannual human resources update, as well as our 2022 plan for our board evaluation. I am not going to ask for any other business because we are in a time crunch. Committee members, any conflict of interest, recognizing, of course, that while the agenda, you may not see a conflict of interest, once discussion starts, you can certainly declare a conflict then. I'm not seeing any conflicts. Can I please have a motion to, are there any items to be held on the consent agenda? No. Can I please have a motion to approve the public consent agenda? Marcel, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Fletcher. All in favor? Yay. Okay, item 3, business arising from the public meeting and agenda. Any questions from the action items, or did I just do that? Dara?
No. So the action items include open meeting requirements, demographic data for vendors for TCHC, and other matters that that continue to be in progress towards deadlines in 2022. One item has been completed. That's to provide an information by way of a briefing note on an overview of development projects. And we are in progress in relation to the process of consultation with deputants in relation to our board rules.
Very good. Okay, if are there any questions around this? Seeing none, can I have a motion to receive the action item updates? Paula, thank you. Marcel seconds. All in favor? Yay. 4, our strategic communications plan. Paula, you've joined us. Great. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair.
That always shocks me. I think I'm supposed to be giving a communications plan when I hear my name like that, Paula, as you know. I thought, geez, I am. No, you are. Thank you.
I was going to pause, but I will continue.
Thank
if you don't
you.
want to do it.
No, I'm not going to do it. You're going to do it.
So, Madam Vice Chair, we actually do have a presentation if we would like to walk you through. I know we're crunched for time, but if you'd prefer just to first answer questions, I'm happy to do that as well.
No, please walk us through.
Okay, so Bruce, were you able to share? I'm joined by Bruce Malik, who's our Director of Strategic Communications, and Senior Director Ada Wong, who's our Director of Digital Brand and Content Strategy, who recently joined the organization. So with that, Bruce, it's actually the PowerPoint presentation.
Yes,
okay,
if you
there
allowed
you
to
go.
share the screen. Okay.
Right there.
I think
okay,
Sonia
perfect.
is controlling that. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Sonia. Excellent. All right, if we go to the next slide. Please, thank you. So this is really just a progress report. We had come to the board back in March, or to this committee back in March, with the first strategic communications plan presentation. And we had a number of commitments that we made through that plan that you can see here. And what I wanted to share with you today was just a reflection on some of the highlights of what we've accomplished in terms of delivering on the plan that was approved by this committee. To the next slide, please. So what you'll see consistently throughout this presentation is metrics attached to the work that we've been doing. So one of our primary goals is really to build trust and using an integrated channel base to do that. And you can see here just some examples of those programs. One of our community partnership programs, We Build, We Brand. We've actually driven that particular campaign across multiple platforms. And as you can see, the impressions and then engagements. And when I talk about impressions, it's really the number of times that the page has been viewed, or the program has been viewed, or content has been viewed. And then when we talk about engagement, it's when it's liked or shared or clicked on in terms of the number of times it's interacted with. So you can see we have quite a lot of success as it relates to these campaigns. And there's many more. These are just great examples. What this also helps us do is understand what of our content is actually working. So when we're able to measure against the campaigns that we're running, we're able to see then if they're working, if they're having impact, and then it helps us think about how we continue to build a strategy going forward. We can move to the next slide, please. One of the things we're very focused on as an organization, and I would have talked about that back in March, is really moving to what we call a digital first strategy. And one of the first initiatives that we did in this kind of area was our gratitude report. As you know, traditionally, annual reports are created in a print format. They tend to be quite costly and time consuming to deliver that way. And they also don't have the ability to be interactive. So when we moved to digital strategy with this particular report, we were able to have some really rich, vibrant content in the form of videos, capturing both our tenants, our employees, and members of the community, and some of our partnerships that we have with groups like ArtPath as an example. Next slide, please. So one of the things we're very focused on is being proactive as storytellers in both the traditional and non-traditional space. And these are just examples of social media. We've really ramped up our efforts across multiple platforms: Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. And these are some examples of those stories being told and shared across those different social media platforms. And again, as you can see, really in trying to understand how are these having impact in terms of those that actually connect with our communications around the great things that are happening in our communities and within our organization. There is an amazing amount of content for us to draw from as we engage with tenants, our employees in the communities. And we're really trying to do a lot of work to sort of mine those stories so that we can actually tell them in a proactive way that really starts to build our brand and image as an organization going forward. Next slide, please. We're also very focused on advancing. We have our strategic priorities and we have a number of goals within those priorities. So we use our media platforms and our communications to really speak about our progress. This example here is really related to the hubs. I know a number of our board members have been present at the various hub openings, but these again give us an amazing opportunity to share the hub experience, but also then talk about the features and what tenants can expect in those environments. It also gives us an opportunity to showcase our partners and community members and staff who are sort of working in these hubs and delivering the services that we have promised to tenants. Next slide, please. Another area of focus is our direct-to-tenant communications, really related to things that we know that are important to them. So one of the things we most recently did was update our tenant safety guide, which is, again, in digital format. It's very interactive. We have a video. We also have a printed version that goes to all homes. We have a tenant loop, which is a quarterly, and our seniors speak, which is within our seniors buildings, which are quarterly publications that we send out. And then updated things like tenant guides. So we're constantly trying to update this information, but also make them really relevant and timely in terms of the content that we include, especially with newsletters like Tenant Loop. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we're really, again, this is multidimensional in terms of the work that we do here, is really showcasing and sustaining the narrative around the commitments that we make as an organization. So examples of this would be our commitment to the progress we're making in implementing the Confronting Anti-Black Racism strategy. We had a great media broadcast piece with Evelyn Amponza, our new director, which was able to talk very directly about the work and the experiences that we hope our tenants will have as a result of the CABA strategy. And then a lot of work this year in partnership with our path related to accessibility. And we've been very excited about the amount of coverage we've been able to drive here, but also what I would say in terms of working with the committee to add really important elements to our communications, such as in social media, providing descriptors on the images, so that when individuals with visual impairments, for example, actually using a screen reader, they're able to then ascertain what's actually in the image, because social media tends to be very visual. So being able to ensure that we're really spending a lot of time understanding what would make the experience better for all tenants, but also a special focus as it relates into improving that for tenants who have disabilities. Next slide, please. Again, on that same vein, a lot of obviously activity around COVID-19, a lot of effort by the team to make sure that we're using communications to help keep tenants and our staff safe. This here is an example of Wear a Mask campaign. We had heard actually through one of our committee or board meetings from a tenant who expressed a concern that there wasn't complete compliance with wearing masks in buildings. So we very quickly put together a campaign which consisted of posters, door-to-door communications, but then also having our staff be part of the communication by wearing T-shirts that would ask people to wear a mask. So very, again, creating a very friendly environment to be able to communicate that message. Next slide, please. We can't forget, and part of the plan that I had delivered back in March was really around also making sure that we did a very good job in terms of communicating internally to our employees. Obviously, it's really important that we keep information relevant and timely for them. We have an internal publication called In the Know, which I actually just approved a few minutes ago that just went out. And what's really interesting about that is we have huge reach. As you can see, the chart that you see here in terms of the amount of the employees that open that and actually go through the content. It's at 83%, right down to 87% and fluctuates, but that's really high in terms of employees engaging with a communication like this. And what I'd say is we've worked very hard to ensure, again, that the content is vibrant, is interactive, and we often have video content. We have information about new employees. So, from the statistics that you see there, it would seem that we're on track in terms of delivering the right kind of information at the right time for our employees, and we continue to build on that. Next slide, please. So often where we focus as an organization, and this is common for most organizations, is really on the traditional media and the kinds of stories that we might have through the traditional press. I presented when back in March an analysis of kind of where we were in terms of tone and reach and sentiment with Toronto Community Housing News. And I think, in that, the sentiment was that it's really not as bad as we think. There's a lot of room for improvement. And with the nature of the work that we do, we can't expect to always have 100% positive, but to strive towards being part of the story, to have balanced coverage is really important for us. And as you can see, in terms of the measurements since April, we've been able to, 2/3 of our stories, or 62.5%, were either positive or neutral in tone. And within the negative stories, those are stories such as, gun violence, operational matters such as evictions, transfers, or service, where the media has found a voice for our tenants or impacted members of the community. Where we strive to have, to be involved there, even though they're negative, is to make sure that we have our voice at the table, so that we don't shy away from being part of the conversation, so that we are able to communicate a perspective as it relates to Toronto community housing. So we've been moving towards that, and many of the stories that we see that have more of a negative tone are beginning to include the TCHC voice. One other item I'd add to this is distributing that voice. So quite often as an organization, we use a statement or one person, and we're trying to do a lot more around ensuring that those that are subject matter experts or closer to the community are a voice in these stories. And we actually just went through 3 months of intensive media training across the organization at the executive team and with those subject matter experts and community leaders within Toronto Community Housing that we felt were important to be part of the media voice as we move forward. Next slide, please. And this is my last slide, and this is just a metric slide. As I mentioned, with communications, it's part art, part science, and this is the science part in terms of making sure that we're able to measure the amount of impressions. What's really been, I guess, exciting for us as a team is the growth that we're seeing across our social media channels, on average 1,000 a month, which is above industry norm. And that's telling us that the content that we're starting to put out there is actually gaining traction and actually driving more followership of us as an organization, and people actually wanting to hear news about us. As it relates to our website, we have work to do there, even though we have a number, since April, 246,000 visits, and page views. What we're finding is they're not necessarily on the pages that we want people to spend time. They're on things like hiring and recruitment, which is important, but on tenant-facing pages, for example, we need to re-engineer our website environment and our web content to become more of a service-oriented experience for those that visit our site. So again, this data provides us with really good insights in terms of how we can further develop our communications efforts going forward and be a really great vehicle to sort of tell the TCHC story both externally and within our own organization. So with that, I will close and thank you and open up for any questions.
Thank you very much, Paula. It is a good news story. That's why I wanted you to share, because we've seen that we've turned the corner in terms of TCHC and our relationship with media. So very good. Congratulations to you and your team. Comments or questions, committee members? Paula, then Marcel.
Go ahead, Marcel. I've talked to.
Yeah, no, I read part of it earlier, and to be honest with you, it looked like it was a huge undertaking, and a good job.
Thank you.
Very good. Mm-hmm.
It's just a bit of a sensitive subject, and it just has to do with saying, and maybe it's just the way you place it, Paula, but the negative around the gun violence, considered a negative story, but it's actually just a real life story. And sometimes it's the only way that I know anything's happened. And so I'm just looking at from the Star with the Chester Lee young man that was killed, or with Thane Murray, or so I don't know how we're introducing that, and what the positive side is how we're starting to deal with it. But I find that it maybe we just need to be, it's not a story anybody likes to hear, and it's not a story we like to tell, but it's very real in our communities. So for me, there's a big delta, and saying it's a negative story because somebody said somebody was shot. No, it's the only way that to date, we're able to say, gee, something's happening in these properties. What is it? How are you going to deal with it? Because it's never communicated to the board internally. So I think it's a great report. I'm really glad to see we're lifting up, but I have that little niggly feeling for me that it's kind of always been our dirty little secret, and we have to face it front on positively and deal with it. So I guess that's.
So what I'm hearing you say, Paula, is that when a story is factual, it's not necessarily negative, although the incident itself is unfortunate.
Yes. So the story here about this very unfortunate Chester Lee, where again one young man is there going out for a smoke and then he's killed. It's simply what happened. It's just a factual story. It's what the Crown Attorney said. And what the court said by a court reporter. So to me, it's not saying, gee, that's negative, look at what's happening. It's saying, here's a factual story. And I think we just need to come out from the dark spaces about this issue to confront it.
So maybe it's a conversation the next time you're revisiting your metrics, Paula.
Yes, so yes, thank you so much. And actually through the Vice Chair, if I may respond, I completely agree. I think one of our intentions here is to actually become part of the story, to make sure that what is happening and how we're responding is actually being told. But I do agree, for us to be able to capture that in a way that reflects that it's an actual factual incident that's occurred, I will take that away in an advisement. So thank you for that.
Because nobody ever interviewed anybody here in this story. Yeah. But it's what happened. And then there's Lawrence Orton, and then there's Regent Park and Thane Murray. That's just constant.
Exactly.
And, that's just partly, I think, not in telling the story, but I would just advise that we need to all have our eyes on these stories and be figuring out what's going on in our communities and how to shift it.
Absolutely.
Very good. So a motion to accept.
Thank you. I'll move.
Thank you, Marcel. Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Paula.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Barbara, I think you're back up. We're moving to item number 5, the biannual human resources update.
And I do also have a brief presentation to take the committee through.
Yes.
And I'll just ask Sonia to put the presentation up for us. There we go. Thank you. So I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to walk the committee through what HR has been up to this year, and give you an opportunity to understand. I joined the organization in January, and I wanted to share some of my observations and some of the directions that we're heading in on a go-forward basis. If we can move to the next slide, please. So the HR division has been focusing its efforts on, of course, driving key organizational priorities to ensure that the organization meets its strategic goals and objectives. And underpinning everything that we are doing, we are also making sure that we are building and sustaining a culture of trust and confidence in HR, in the division, in the programs, in all of our policies and procedures. I would characterize 2021 as a year in transition. Certainly coming in new to the organization, it was imperative to take the time to understand, learn the organization, understand current state. And that was done through a variety of mechanisms. Lots of listening and asking questions, observing, engaging with our staff, engaging through our engagement survey, and really taking the time to learn and understand the organization. Next slide, please. understanding the current state was informed by a number of different things, and I've highlighted a few of them here. Of course, upon joining the organization, I was well aware of the recent Rubin Tomlinson report and the key recommendations that came out of that. And that was certainly critical information to understand and to be prepared to act on in coming in. As well, I would say we were fortunate to understand additional information and insights about the organization through the CABR consultation process that took place in the latter part of 2020 and which informed the development of the CABR strategy in the first part of this year. As I also mentioned, we undertook an employee engagement survey this year, which provided a wonderful opportunity to hear directly from the voices of our employees what their experiences are in the organization. And we actually incorporated into that engagement survey an HR satisfaction survey as well, which was something we hadn't previously done. That was very deliberate and intentional to understand not just what employees overall in the organization were experiencing, but really to understand what's the experience with HR. Beyond the engagement survey, we then subsequently undertook employee focus groups to delve deeper into the information that came through from the survey. And beyond those more formalized methods of learning about the organization, there were many, many informal consultations that I personally was fortunate to be a part of. And so whether that was meeting with my ELT colleagues, meeting with frontline employees, hearing directly from employees who reached out to share experiences, concerns. Again, there was a lot of learning that took place in the first several months of this year. Next slide, please. What I have learned, what we know right now, HR in this organization is engaged in all aspects of Toronto Community Housing's business, whether it's operations restructuring, the homes implementation, the development and implementation of the CABR strategy, current work underway from transitioning from contract management to direct management, transitioning to the stand-up of the new Seniors Housing Corporation are just a sampling of the key initiatives where HR plays a key and instrumental role. Next slide, please. What I also learned and observed is that we have an HR team in this organization that is very passionate about the work and this place, and they are very tenant focused, even though they are probably one of the internal divisions that don't interact directly with tenants, but that line of sight to everything they are doing leads to being very tenant focused and passionate about serving our key customer. HR in the organization offers a full suite of programs, policies, and initiatives. We serve in many, many instances as a trusted advisor and a partner to our division. And this division has also experienced in the last number of years quite a bit of disruption and instability, which has certainly had an impact upon its reputation and upon the experiences of our employees themselves. Next slide, please. So taking everything that we know and what we've learned, we are right now in the process of building an HR plan and articulating what we want, what the vision for the future of HR is in this organization. And we want to be able to leverage what we're doing well. And we also want to learn from our past mistakes and position ourselves to truly be a model for a modern and high-functioning HR organization. We want to be an enabler to the business. We want to be a strategic partner. We want to be instrumental in truly building the culture and the experience that our employees have from frontline all the way up to the top. And underpinning everything that we do, we have to have a line of sight to building trust and confidence, ensuring compliance, procedural fairness, candidacy, transparency. That is underpinning what we do and how we will realize our vision. Next slide, please. So how will we realize this vision? HR is going through a transformation as we speak, and it really is about building that plan. And you may say, well, it's been a year. What's the plan? And I think I want to mention that it's very important in building this plan and understanding how we want to position HR for success in the future is really taking this time first to focus internally, because we can't do better externally if we don't take care of ourselves internally. And understanding, do we have a common vision and purpose? Does everyone on the team understand what our role is? Do we have the right people with the right skills in the right positions? Those are fundamental places that we have paid attention to and are focusing right now. We are also looking across each functional area of HR, whether it's recruitment, labor relations, learning and development, our payroll systems, is applying that employee experience lens, understanding what is the experience we want to create for our employees in the policies, in the programs and services that we deliver. Applying that employee experience lens will be critical in ensuring that we realize the vision that we have. And of course, applying an equity lens to everything that we are doing, because building our equity, diversity, and inclusion plan from this organization is going to be a key contributor to building that trust and confidence that we want to gain in the organization. So ultimately, our goal is to inspire trust and confidence consistently, top to bottom, and really eliminate what we heard many times repeated, and in particular through the RT report, is what appears to be a culture of fear. Next slide, please. I thought I'd stop and say, as I've talked a lot about what we're doing in building this plan going forward, it's important to mention that we're doing all of this while we're carrying on business as usual. And business as usual is very busy. And so to highlight some of the key work and achievements of the team this year, I present to you just a sampling of some of those key achievements right here. And of course, in the central is that the HR division, as I mentioned earlier, supports the key strategic priorities articulated in TCHC's strategic plan. And in particular, that includes developing our EDI strategy and framework. We talked about launching our EDI survey this year, which we have now launched, and it's actually open and live right now. That survey will be instrumental in helping us understand current state, not only what the current representation is across our organization, but delving deeper, what are the experiences that our employees are having? And it is that information that will help us develop concrete, specific, targeted actions to really truly build an inclusive culture. We are also implementing an action plan to support the implementation of the CABR strategy with key actions that are specific to the HR division. Throughout the year, the team has also, of course, been involved very much in our COVID response. We are supporting, as I mentioned before, the transition from contract managed buildings to direct management. We are looking at how we deliver our services, where we can modernize, introducing technology to leverage efficiencies. We have implemented a leadership development program, which is key to really building leadership capacity and also building the culture that we want to achieve throughout the organization. We continue to support the operations restructuring through significant training, in particular our achievement of the Better Together training, which touched on over 800 employees this year. As you know, we successfully negotiated a new collective agreement with our labor partners this year, and we are key in helping to launch the new homes system. So that's just a sampling of some of these achievements of the team. All the while as we look to reinvent ourselves and truly build a progressive HR division. Moving forward, next slide, please. We have a number of priorities articulated for 2022, some of them internal focused within the division and others that are aligned with the strategic initiatives of the organization. So internally within HR, As we look to build our HR plan, we will be looking at the policies that we have in place. Are they the right ones? Are they modern and up to date? We want to ensure that we have the right policies to attract and retain diverse talent. We want to be recognized as an employer of choice. And we will be focusing on finalizing and implementing a future of work policy, leveraging what we've learned through COVID in particular. We also want to be able to have mechanisms in place to evaluate how effective are we in what we're doing. So we have a lot of measurements right now, but we want to make sure, are they the right measurements? Are they those that really truly focus on key outcomes and give us an opportunity to identify what are we doing well, where do we need to change gears, always with a lens on continuous improvement. We will look to leverage technology and streamline our processes. And we will also take a look inward in terms of ensuring that we are optimally structured and resourced to deliver on our key goals and priorities. Across the organization, as I've mentioned, top of the list priority is for us to really advance our equity, diversity, and inclusion strategy and action plans, and to also further implement the key actions arising from the CABR strategy. We will support the transition to the new Seniors Housing Corporation effective June 1st. We will support the future development, future transfer of the development function to create TO. And we will also engage in labor negotiations with OPSU. So this is just a sampling again of some of the key priorities going forward. And I'm happy to take any questions from the committee on either this presentation or the report that I have before you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Comments or questions from committee members? Paula?
Yeah, I just noticed, Barbara, in a lot of the directions from the board, and I didn't see it in the kind of work, was to look at CSU and come up with, let us know about the hiring and the most recent hiring and the ethnic breakdown. I don't see that anywhere. So I tend to not see it until we bring it up. So I don't know where that is.
Through the chair. So Councillor, we will certainly be able to do that through the outcome of the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion survey that is underway right now. So that will be the mechanism which we will have accurate data about the representation in CSU, and beyond just having the data, we will also understand what the experiences of our staff are from an equity, diversity, and inclusion perspective.
So is that particular to CSU or is that across the corporation?
It's across the corporation, but including CSU.
Yes. But we have actually asked for that very particularly quite a few times. So I would like that to be a little clearer. That has been a particular board request. I don't know, perhaps the chair remembers from when it started. But
2019.
I don't find it there.
Through the chair, I believe that some of that information had been previously provided through TSC, but I can go back and check.
And I'll just add that I'm certainly happy to make it very clear in the action plans that it will be deliberately in terms of highlighting the information as it pertains to CSU.
I think it was through the VRP, Barbara.
Maybe.
It's the VRP that we're focused on.
Yeah.
I would just add, though, that I don't believe the organization has the fulsome data that has been requested to date, and that data should be available to us through the survey.
Understand, but it's a very particular request about the VRP. And I just acknowledging that this is now whatever
I will ensure
we're making again for that, and finding it difficult not to. It's not a survey in the whole corporation that's been asked for. It's that information that's been asked for.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Thank you for your report, Barbara, and we're hoping that when the survey results comes back, it's in terms of representation, that we also have the breakdown based on position within the organization.
Yes, we will have that.
Thank you. Marcel, any comments or questions? Motion to receive the HR plan. Marcel, Paula, yay. Thank you very much, Barbara.
Thank you.
Looking forward to results of the survey.
Yes, me too.
Okay, moving on. Board evaluation. We're almost there, folks. Dara?
So I can I think summarize the content of the report pretty quickly. We've previously in 2020 conducted a board evaluation process. We received some feedback from board members at that time that suggested that the board might want to consider a different way of approaching that process in 2022 when it was next due. So we have recommended that the committee suggest to the board that it consider an alternative evaluation tool to support the implementation of this survey in 2022, that it consider directing us to retain an external advisor to assist in that process and confirm the questions that that we've made attachment 1 to the report as the basis for that survey. Now, the questions that we've given you as attachment number 1 are the questions that were asked in 2020. They're a starting point for a discussion that we hope to have with the board about what questions are important to the board to ask through this process. We provided them to you in this context simply because they were the questions that were asked the last time. Not suggesting that they're the right questions, but we'd like your feedback as to whether or not they are. We're happy to have any input from board members. This is your process as to how we manage a survey that best serves the board's needs.
Thank you, Dara. Go ahead.
Any comments or questions?
Yeah. No. So you will bring this to.
I think I'd just
Paula?
like to make sure, based on the tenants, that we find that the information we're getting, we've talked about that before, the information stream, that it's what we need in order to have the kind of good relationship and proper board governance that we'd like to have. If we can also somehow include that, please, Dara. I don't know how to write that, but I think you know what I'm talking about.
So what we try and do with the survey is identify those kinds of, provide board members with an opportunity to identify those kind of shortcomings so that we can engage in a process with the board, building on the shortcomings that the board identifies through that process. So happy to hear that feedback. We can look at questions that try and build that out in the survey. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks, Dara.
Thank you.
Very good. Marcel, comments or question? Marcel?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it.
Okay, take your time.
I'm just wondering, would some of these questions be coming off the last, that letter from those 2 previous directors?
So I think the information that we're asking the board to consider as making part of the survey for 2022 should absolutely be informed by feedback that the board's received and that we've received in the past from board members, whether it's through the survey or through other mechanisms, their exit interviews with departing board members or communication that we've received from board members. And again, happy to have feedback from any board member as to what questions they think should be part of the survey in that regard. We can in the context of that process, either engage at the board level through the committee or offline in relation to into those comments. Happy to receive emails from board members with suggestions as to how we might build areas of concern into the survey.
Thanks for that, Marcel. I had actually forgotten those 2 letters. So yes, it should inform. Dara, will you be having this conversation at the board meeting next week?
It'll be on the agenda for next week's meeting.
Very good. Okay, so we'll have a more full conversation then in terms of the kinds of things that we should be asking. Okay, not hearing any more comments or questions. Motion to receive the report. Paula, Marcel, thank you. Okay, any other business? We actually have 20 minutes left. Anything that's pressing that you really need, Paula, Marcel, for us to talk about? Dag, Dara, anything that you want us to know? Okay, hearing nothing, motion to adjourn.
Do we excuse people? I know Brian has just sent everybody an email saying he's at North York General in the hallway with his aunt. But I don't know if we excuse, we should just move to excuse him if we didn't do that already. Did we do
So-
that already, Dara?
We assumed it.
Yes. And I don't think we follow the city practice because
Okay.
of the specific rules under the City of Toronto
Right.
Act with respect to attendance at council meetings.
I just wanted to note that he
Yes.
legitimately is now stuck in a hallway. with his-
Councillor, are you trying to impose city council rules on us?
No, yes, I actually am. You got that right.
Not allowed.
The ones that work, only the ones that
The
work,
ones that you like.
the ones that serve us.
Motion to adjourn our meeting. Thank you
Good
both.
job, good job.
Very good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, staff.
Thank
Have
you
a
very
great
much,
rest of
Madam
the
Vice
day,
Chair.
folks.
Thanks for taking over.
Absolutely.